Welcome back to King Pilled. It's me. I'm Matt. That's Cooper. You can barely see him. Or I guess as he goes by now, the Rizzler. How's it going, Mr. Rizzler? Oh shit, what up?
Oh shit, what up?
What's good, buddy?
Oh, uh, Zen. Zen is good. Diet Coke is good. Bubbly is good. What else do I got?
I
That's
have
it.
Zen.
That's good.
Sitting here acting as if we haven't been like sitting on a video call talking for the last 3 hours or something.
How you doing? How was your day? Good to hear from you.
I was good apart from the part where I had to sit on a video call with you for hours. Other than that, pretty good. How's it going, chat people? I see Brody in there. I see Ryan, Buck, Jason, Kyle. That's
The
as far
gang's
up
all.
as Yeah, the gang is here. It's good to see you guys. So we got a couple different things we want to talk about today. Title of the show. The title of the show is very clever. I'm very proud of this one. We've got all sorts of double entendres in it. American spirit, old world impotence versus new world spunk. But before we really get into that, do us a favor, like the stream if you're watching us live. If you're not watching us live, like the stream anyways. If you're listening to this on one of your podcatchers later on, whatever your preferred podcatcher is, then leave us a rating and review. That helps us get onto other people's radar better. You help us game the algorithm. We put the content out for you guys, and then you guys do your part by helping us game the algorithm, and all is well. I was interesting today. Our good friend Buck in the chat is truly a regime dissident now. He's made the big time. He got his own mention in a hit piece. This chick showed up, and my understanding is that a number of people have known this is coming for a little while. She was making her rounds, asking people, saying, "Hey, I want to do a piece about orthodoxy in America, orthodoxy in Texas. You know, the spread of orthodoxy." And everybody who talked to her was like, "Yeah, this is a hit piece. There's definitely a hit piece coming. This Fordham is all over this chick."
No, she's just asking the tough questions.
Oh, right. Yeah, how silly of me to assume it could be anything but that. It's completely innocent intentions.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is you might say that this is a problem with journalists, but I'd say it's probably just a problem with women. And when you put the two of them together, then you're only going to get negative outcomes.
I've never met a woman I liked.
Even my own priest got himself a mention. She misspelled his name, which I'm sure is probably going to be the thing that tweaks him the most about it. I'm just offended that apparently I didn't warrant a mention. You know, if you're talking about major Orthodox influences in Texas, then how could you miss King Pilled? This is appalling. But maybe it's because I hadn't yet had my conversation with academic agent yesterday or Orrin McIntyre tomorrow. That's probably what it is. If she'd have written this piece after that, then I definitely would have gotten my own mentions. I just want to know what I would have been like. So Buck was the Gen X firefighter with tattoos. That was his meme that he falls into. I want to know what mine would have been. How would she have figured out how to try to make me seem scary?
Dirty old gooner, gray in his beard.
Yeah, it's getting kind of extensive there. I was
Silver
looking
fox.
Myself in the that's why I comfort myself with. That's what my wife says.
Bearded gay hipster.
Yeah, maybe I would have redirected her piece to like how I don't know, how right wing ortho-fascism is taking over the LGBTQ community, and with King Pilled leading the charge.
Yeah, you could have totally like saved the day.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It would have been the
Well,
bearded gay hipster and his twink friend.
oh, I was about to say, since I mean, you obviously weren't like a mention, and this just goes to show her own incompetence that she didn't even mention the king pilled.
Right.
I have to say, I also warrant a spot in that hit piece just by proxy because I'm
Uh-huh.
a member of the king pilled.
That's right. And if you too want to be a member of the King Pill, you can. There is a
And maybe you
become a
can be
channel
in the
member.
next hit piece too.
Right. join the line. Get in line. Queue up with the rest of us and prepare to be mentioned in your own hit piece.
What do you think she would have said about me? That I'm a twink? Do you think that's it? Is that all there is to me? Is that all I am to you?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe if she saw the episode where you got naked and drunk and danced around the whole time, she might have I don't know, questioned your. She might have said something about being what's the term uh, it's the politically correct term for retarded, like neuro something or other.
Neurodivergent?
Neurodivergent. Yeah. If my wife is listening right now, I'm in trouble. But she would
Well,
have
you
said
see,
something about like neurodivergence and the attraction of fascism for autists or something.
that's a core part of my thesis. Um, we don't have enough transvestites represented on the King Build. We have the fascists,
Hmm.
but um, as an aside, I could have honestly I could have saved the day because as you all know, my name is the Rizzler, and I could have hit her with my pickup lines,
Oh yeah.
and then
Could
I
have
would have
asked
been
her what
like,
the difference is between jam and jelly.
yeah, yeah. And then I'd been like, no thanks. I'm married. I'm taken. Get out of here, wench.
uh
And she
King
would dream about
Salmonfish.
me.
King Salmonfish is in the chat again. He says that this time he's not going to rant about the Fed. He says Mockingbird will not mention me. I've done a lot of loud, stupid shit. It's pretty unusual. I like this guy. I hope you stick around, King Salmonfish. You're a valued member of the King Pilled chat.
Who's Mockingbird? Is that me?
No, I think Mockingbird is Operation Mockingbird.
Oh,
That's
I
my
see, I
guess, at
see.
least. Given that typically the subject is the Fed.
Hey guys, how's the audio sound? Is it like good? Finally?
Yeah, there's apparently one thing I've learned now after having gone on the show with AA yesterday is that I apparently I sound like Richard Spencer to people. People
Hmm.
thought that I was like Richard Spencer in disguise, hiding behind my no camera. Audio is peachy like Georgia. Good. So Cooper, you said before we get into this American spirit conversation, we might actually be able to segue these in together. I think. What do you said you have a rant? What is your rant?
Well, maybe not so much a rant. Maybe a rant is a little harsh. I just wanted to talk about our neo-pagan friends. And by that I mean make fun of them. Because they're really gay.
Go on.
What do you well, okay. How do I approach this? Maybe first I'll extend a hand of like of understanding. Like I see, really try to steelman them. And then maybe I'll correct the record. Then maybe we'll make fun of them.
Deal. I think
Okay.
that's fair.
Okay. First things first. When it comes to these neo-pagan dorks, I can sympathize where they're coming from a little bit. Insofar as they're reacting to the Christianity of their world, what they've been exposed to. And what that amounts to is like soft rock bands and bedazzled jeans and like lesbian ministers. And they're like, this is kind of gay. And I'm like, you're right. It is that. And as a result, they have this urge this desire for something that seems like powerful and exciting and vital. And so they say, hey, let's go look into the gods of my ancestors. And they see all these big, strong, like killing monsters and throwing lightning bolts and stuff. And they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, I want like throwing stars and nunchucks and fucking cool too. So I get that. I get that. I understand. However, what's ironic is that their ancestors who worshipped, big, strong lightning bolt throwing god and like or or like forest gremlins or something like whatever, all of their ancestors abandoned that for Christianity. And it makes you wonder. So if, Christianity, in your estimation, is so cucked, why did all your big, strong ancestors convert to Christianity? And so I challenge them, like, maybe rather than reacting to the Christianity of your day that you've been exposed to, go look at the Christianity of your ancestors and you'll find a very different picture. You'll see that they abandoned the tree gremlins and shit because they realized that the God of Christianity was the creator of the world, was the king of the universe, was the God who conquered the frickin' Roman Empire. That's a very different Christianity. And maybe they would come to the light if they realized that. And then they would realize that the tree gremlins they're worshiping are kind of pathetic gay losers.
So what you're doing right now is you're doing the Pepe meme where it's like split in half, and on one side you have the Wojak who's like all sad and depressed and dirty, and all the bad stuff is on that side, and then you're the Pepe on the other side who's standing there in like glowing robes, offering your hands out. Come to the light side. Come to the side where everything is not gay.
Yeah. Yeah. So to be fair to them, I understand what they're reacting against. I get it. I totally get it. But then on the other hand, like, dude, you understand that the god you're worshiping, the gods of your ancestors, like, how many layers of LARP do you have to stack up? Because first of all, these gods have been like dead, and that religion is dead and gone for like millennia at this point. And all you have to piece together some sort of like, I don't know, religion, pseudo religion that you can LARP now is fragmentary commentaries or documentation by Christians centuries later after those dumb gods were abandoned.
Right. Yeah, even the history today that you're depending on is itself something that was given to you by Christians.
Yeah.
Brody here says in quotes, "No, our ancestors were taken over by Christian oppressors who stole our history."
So in other words, your gods are weak and gay and dumb.
Right. Like
if a bunch of like Christ cucks, just came and took their history and, oppressed them, like, oh.
Doesn't it kind of make you feel like a bitch when you say that?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's really not many options left for your ancestors then. If you want to say that that's what happened, either your ancestors were a bunch of bitches who got themselves overrun and conquered by a religion of peace, or they were like, I don't know, too retarded or something to know any better. Like in either case, it seems like they're probably not people that are really going to be worth cherishing. So what we're saying, we're actually presenting you a more positive vision of your ancestors than you are.
Like, oh, how do I say this that's not so, like, I'm trying to think of a way to say it that's not so crude, but I can't think of one right now. When when your world is dominated by a religion that lends itself to like fucking your sister on a dirt floor and eating human meat, you know, you, you can understand why maybe they were conquered by a bunch of peace-loving hippies, because they were literally retarded.
And now they have their little shrines with their like picture of Apollo. They go out and they dance around in the woods and like drink goat's blood and shit. Like you guys, what is it? The guy on Twitter, the Hellenist, he's like some some like short fat little Ecuadorian or something. And he's larping as this like Aryan Hellenist Chad.
Yeah, it is really funny because I see people whenever he posts his stupid cringe, people will comment like, "Dude, you're literally brown and Jewish. What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Way to not engage with my argument." He turns into a libertarian.
No matter what happens, the libertarians always come back. So anyways, yeah. We had a guy, we promised that we were going to have a little roast session of the neopagans, and a guy commented on the episode and said, "Hey, please at least recognize that there's some of us who aren't." I don't remember what he said. He's
Like,
basically
we're not dumb and we're not racist or something. Like, which, okay, I don't know if you're doing yourself any favors by saying that.
Yeah, right.
Because, you know, okay, maybe you could like take neopaganism and break it into two camps. You could have like the aforementioned in a couple streams ago, I talked about like, okay, you have autism, you're on the internet, you have two choices: to trans yourself or to like become a fascist. So you have the ones that go the fascist route. Okay. And some of them branch off into like the esoteric paganism stuff. And then you kind of have like the other pagans, which are like the astrology crystal hags, you know, kind of the hippies.
Yeah.
The remnants of that. I have a feeling that person is more in that latter category.
Right.
Which that kind of makes you keep falling into the same trap where your worldview just ends up being gay. You know?
Right. What's interesting, this actually, I think this is what segues us into this old world versus new world conversation.
Well, before we go to that, maybe we should. Okay. So I extended a hand to them.
Mm-hmm.
I corrected the record a little bit, and then we made fun of them. Maybe now we take it a little seriously and be like, okay, this shit's pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I'll tell a story. I actually told you this story the other day. I remember last year, it would have been leading up to Lent or maybe early Lent. I had just become a catechumen a couple months prior. And I remember I was going for one of my Saturday morning walks at like 3 a.m, 3:30, something like that. And I go into the gas station, and there's this guy working there that I've never seen before. He's never worked there before or since. Maybe he was just covering someone's shift. I don't know. But as soon as I walk into the gas station, and he did seem a little spurky, but he immediately walks up to me, and he's standing like a foot and a half away from me. It was really uncomfortable. And he seemed friendly enough or whatever, but there was a sort of kind of maniacal edge behind his gaze that I found very uncanny valley and kind of unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately starts telling me about how he's like the leader of some neo-pagan group or something like that, and how he regularly talks to spirits and even threw out some names, and how he feels like he might be possessed or something like that. And he's kind of like, like laughing kind of like that in between everything he's saying. And I looked at him and I said, you should probably go talk to like an Orthodox priest or something. And he immediately ran off. And I couldn't help but think of, there's these stories in scriptures where the apostles or Christ, they go into like a new town or something like that, and it's like immediately all of the demon possessed people just flock to them. And I wonder if there's like a similar sort of thing going on there. I don't know.
Hmm.
But in any case, it is cringe and it is a LARP. Many LARPs, LARPs upon LARPs, turtles all the way down, LARPing. But I mean, demons are more than happy to take advantage of a LARP. And when you're out dancing naked in the woods, having your orgy and drinking goat's blood, just, thinking you're cool, it's kind of like the same thing as like, the atheists. You see like the Hollywood crew, they're always putting out this media and they have their events or their concerts or whatever. And they're just like, oh, we're just making fun of the Christians. We're owning the Christians by doing this satanic stuff. Like, haha, we're doing the satanic stuff as a joke. And it's like, okay, LARPing is praxis. And at a certain point, where does it end? Like, where do you draw the line between like, oh, we're just doing this to make fun of the Christians, or we're just doing this as, oh, it's a joke, and but you're actually doing it. You're actually doing these weird fucked up rituals.
Yeah, there's no such thing as ironic devil worship.
Exactly. That's what I was looking for. Ironic devil worship. You're just opening doors and saying, "Come on in."
You told me the story the other day about Saint Anthony. Do you want to tell that?
Sure. I'm not exactly sure. I assume you have a way you want to tie this in.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the stories from my patron saint, Anthony the Great, is he's out in like the desert doing his Saint Anthony the Great thing, and an old haggard man comes and knocks on his door. And then the old haggard man is like, "Hey, I'm a sinner. Will you pray to your God for me and find out what I need to do to be saved?" And he says, "Okay." So that night he spends the night praying, and then an angel comes to him and says to him, "That was the devil, and he's trying to dupe you. And but, 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 the Lord says, if he actually wants to be saved, the Lord will forgive him if he goes and stands on the mountain facing east and prays for the next century for forgiveness of all of his sins and misdeeds." Because, he doesn't get tired. He doesn't need to sleep. He doesn't need to eat. He can do that. If he really wants to be saved, he can go do that. So the next day, the old haggard man comes back and he says, "Hey, did you pray to your God for me?" And he says, "Yes. And by the way, I know who you are." And he says, "Okay, fine. So what did he say?" St. Anthony tells him, "Well, the Lord says if you go and stand on the mountain there facing east and repent for the next century, you'll be restored to the ranks of angels." And immediately the illusion drops and all of his demonic depravity is shown. And he starts laughing and says, Me repent? Your kind has been worshiping me as a god for centuries." And then he disappears. And I think the point of the story is to illustrate that don't play games with them, don't feel sympathy for them. They're not going to change. Anyway, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
That was essentially the gist. That was the takeaway, because I think one of the things that most of the neo-pagans, who I would say it's probably a rule that every single neo-pagan alive was once a Christian. They were raised Protestant.
Yeah,
probably
probably.
probably 98% of them at least, and
Yeah,
the remaining ones were probably raised some sort of generic secular with some sort of generic secular worldview, which itself is essentially a like an atheist denomination of Protestantism.
Yeah.
So the knowing, as a lifelong Protestant until a few years ago, I know full well the way that Protestants view the pagan gods. They see the pagan gods as essentially Protestants see pagan gods the way that atheists think the way that atheists see God that Christians worship. They see it like flying spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
The Protestants don't think they think these gods were just like some like fiction that people made up to I don't know, like explain why it rains or something, which latent in that is the idea that ancient people were retarded. That
Yeah.
they didn't understand, like there's a storm or something, like that sound that you hear, that's the gods clapping, or whatever. They didn't have like they were retarded. So
the Richard Dawkins critique.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So historically, Christianity fully recognizes the existence of these quote unquote gods. The pagan gods were not like some fiction that ancient people just invented for themselves because they were dumb. The pagan gods are actual deities. These are actual entities that people engaged with and interacted with. They were hostile, corrupt, deceitful, and have great antipathy for humanity. Their sole focus is the destruction of humanity. So they induce humanity into self-destructive behaviors. And in a very similar way, I'd suspect that there's modern secular the kind of the base like default liberal programming that people have in the modern era, I think is it may not be directly related to a specific personality, which is probably a consequence of liberalism destroying personhood. Because if when your fundamental unit is the individual, well, then you've destroyed personhood. You can't have, there is no generic concept of personhood outside of the Trinity. And liberalism has I guess you might say like liberalism has deracinated God from the perspective of humanity. And so the modern liberalism has a lot of these pagan characteristics. You could from a certain resolution, you could lump modern liberal atheism in as a neo-pagan sort of a belief structure. It just it isn't necessarily focused on a specific individual, because abstracting away from or a specific person, because abstracting away from reality is the entire ethos of it. I don't remember where I was going with that.
Well, a couple things in the chat. Winter EC says, "Not this Protestant. Me and most of my Protestant friends see those pagan gods as demons." Okay, good. I'm glad you do.
Yes.
Like, and obviously, we're not talking about every Protestant. Like, I come from a Pentecostal background, and they're hyper spiritualistic and also dangerous. But they likely share that same sort of belief that they're very, very much believe in like demons and stuff. But there is a large swath of Protestantism that pays lip service but doesn't take it seriously.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot that they're like, because so my background coming from as a Seventh-day Adventist, like there was definitely people paid lip service to the idea of demons.
Yeah.
But there's kind of this weird detachment where, oh yeah, there's demons and everything. But then if you talk about say Zeus being a manifestation of a demon, then they'd be kind of like, like it's almost like that's reifying it too much, and that can't be real, and it starts to question priors, and things start to fall apart. But I remember where I was going with it. So the one thing Cooper and I were talking about this morning was, I think I'm beginning to pick up on a pattern. And I don't know if this is entirely true. This is kind of speculative, but I think there might be something to this. That we're seeing, since we started talking about this PayPal mafia stuff, and essentially we've had a whole bunch of people who've been coming to us and like, wow, finally people are not just spreading black pills everywhere. They're not just doomerizing about everything. People come and join the King Pill Discord, and they're like, wow, it's great to finally find some people who aren't just like hopeless and filled with doom. Which is kind of interesting, because that wasn't necessarily the intent. We were just kind of like talking about some stuff that we found interesting. I have for a while been really bothered by this black pilling phenomenon because it's so gay and self-destructive. Austin Coleman says, "Did you ever read the Ellen G. White books?" Oh yes, many times, most of them. That's a whole thing. Off topic. So I think what's becoming clear to me now is with these people who seem to be very hungry for this more optimistic message, a message of hope, and talking about a world that might be better than, like, a future world that might be better than the world we live in now, or at least a path toward creating that, or engaging in the pursuit of that. There seems to be something that resonates with people, that people are hungry for. At the same time, I'm noticing a pattern here where it seems the people who feel that way are also largely Christian. And not just Christian, but like devout Christian. Now, I'm sure there's some sort of a selection bias here, because the personality and everything of our podcast is going to naturally attract people who are like-minded. So those are going to be the people that I encounter the most. But even not just going with the audience of the podcast or people that are in the King Pill Discord or just scrolling through Twitter, it seems that there's a pattern here where you have among the dissident right group of posters and little circle of people that follow them and everything. It seems that the people who are the most doom-pilled are also the most secular.
Yeah.
They're I don't even know if they are Christian or not. Maybe they would consider themselves Christian, or they would, there might be this element where Christianity sort of becomes it's like a cultural thing when you're getting really in touch with like your bloodlines and your ancestors and everything. Then Christianity is sort of something that comes along with that. So there's people who are like, oh yeah, Christianity, but for them, Christianity is like it's like a culture building tool. So it's like a necessary thing that you have to include, but it's not necessarily the foundation. And I think there's something to this. So when I mentioned it to Cooper, it seemed to resonate with him as well. That I think a core part of the black pilling phenomenon is the same secular atheism. Like, just because you have figured out that certain political apparatuses tend toward a certain type of corruption, just because you understand elite theory, just because you have a healthy understanding of the particular tribal impulses of certain different groups of people, doesn't automatically mean that you have solved all the problems of reality. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are seeing reality clearly. That you now have you've entered the ranks of the initiated and you now have all the secrets of the universe. At the end of the day, a political system is only as good as the people within the political system. And it's boomer now to bring up the founding fathers, but this was something that America's founding fathers understood and they wrote about, they talked about. To be able to maintain this sort of experimental system that they were writing about, they said you're going to have a moral, ethical people, which is essentially a way of saying a Christian nation without necessarily explicitly saying it. So this is a pattern now. I want to try to figure out how to say some of this stuff without, I don't think it's good form to be taking pot shots at people, on the timeline, as it were. This isn't necessarily about picking a fight where there doesn't necessarily need to be a fight. It's just observing a pattern here, observing kind of some overlapping patterns. I think Americana has historically always had a deeply Christian ethos. They're kind of they're synonymous to each other. I mean, you've got I think America is fundamentally liberal, and in that sense, then it was founded by a bunch of deists. So I'm not I'm not saying that America is Christian, but I'm saying that aesthetically, that Christianity is something that has a seems to be kind of inextricable from the American personality. There's something in there that the two of them just sort of seem to fit together real nicely, especially when you're talking about this historical American phenomenon of kind of the indefatigable optimism and the go west young man sentiment, and even the entire the ethos that drove the American desire for expansion and imperialism and extending out with this like neo-colonial sort of thing. Like a lot of that was motivated by Christian sentiment. I would say that's like distorted Christian sentiment, but it was Christian sentiment nonetheless. If you read the book The Brothers about the Dulles brothers, who are probably the two most important Americans that nobody's ever heard of, they were both Foster Dulles, who was the Secretary of State under Eisenhower, who was involved in writing the Treaty of Versailles, was deeply embedded with the Nazi regime until like very late in the game because of American business interests through Sullivan and Cromwell, et cetera, et cetera. And then Allen Dulles, his younger brother, who was the head of CIA, their father and or grandfather was like a Protestant missionary. He was a minister and a Protestant missionary, and they had that deep, very stern, like late 1800s American minister, disciplinarian. Like that was what they were bred into. They had that spirit, and they were two of the foremost architects of what became the American national security state. At the same time, there's very clearly a departure between the American spirit with respect to Christianity and the European spirit, which is kind of odd, because obviously Christianity is much older there than it is here, and it's been the official state religion in countries in Europe, but I don't think it's really all that controversial to say that that Europe is far further along the process of social degeneration and spiritual bankruptcy. America is following in that trend, but Europe is far further along. And I'm getting this sense now as I'm kind of parsing out the different threads that I'm seeing developing out of this dissident right-wing Twitter circle, where there seems to be a pretty hard break between the Europeans and the Americans. And there are things, this is something that yesterday when I was talking to Academic Agent, I was starting to realize that there was certain things that if I started talking about them to him, I would have to really like get into the details trying to explain it. And I would be explaining something to someone that definitely hasn't experienced it. And the thing that I was thinking of was this Americana ethos. This, help me out here, Cooper, because we were talking about this earlier, and you pick up on this. Like, you get this when you see the Gundo guys, you see the mullets and the we need to be making babies, we need to be building and innovating, we need to like using energy is good. This sort of irreverent, sort of like fuck you energy. We're just gonna go do our thing, and like this is a very we use Teddy Roosevelt on the thumbnail for the show today because I think he really embodies a lot of this hardy American frontiersman kind of spirit. That is something that really doesn't exist in Europe, and actually European people tend to see that as kind of like cartoonish.
Yeah. And that's, what's interesting about that is I'd say most Americans now, the vast majority, also don't, in any real sense, have any kind of connection to that. In the sense that, like, they're not frontiersmen, they're not, However, I'd say a lot of Americans still identify with that as at least being part of their heritage, that American spirit.
Mm-hmm. This is what Trump tapped into.
Yeah.
That's why Trump resonated with people so much. It's not the only reason why, but it's in large part why. And I don't mean necessarily specifically the things that Trump was saying, but the Trumpian aesthetic. The Trumpian aesthetic touches something, I think, in the American soul.
Make America great again.
Yeah. Like I don't think that slogan would ever, you know, I don't think it would ever really take hold in the same way in Europe that it did, that it really resonated with Americans, because, you know, there's American exceptionalism is sort of almost it's like a pejorative that also that the people who it's targeting will claim it with pride sometimes. But that genuinely is kind of, there's a I remember traveling around in Europe and I went to Turkey and went to South Central America. This is 20-ish years ago. But I remember traveling around there and talking to people and being related to as an American, seeing the way that people viewed Americans. And a part of this was the effect of American media, but where did that American media come from? Like the Top Gun aesthetic, the kind of renegade cowboy. I remember there was some kids at a what's the word I'm looking for here? Orphanage in El Salvador, who they thought that every single American had a helicopter and that we flew around in helicopters. They asked me what my helicopter looked like, and I was like, "What?" Like this is how there was a deep disdain in all the different countries that I went to. There was a deep disdain for America as an empire, but there was a fascination with American culture. And they relating to Europeans, like in Scandinavia. I lived in Norway for 3.5 months and spent a bunch of time in Sweden, and relating to the people there, they were very they were much more kind of staid and conservative and sober, and they like there's a lightheartedness to it, but you could see in the way that they related to those of us Americans there that it was like, oh, there's the Americans, you know, you kind of never know when they're going to do something crazy. They're sort of like unpredictability, and you know, they just kind of have this weird sort of vulgar culture that just drives them, and they don't really give a shit what people think about them. And this is kind of the way that they related to us, which was, to me, it didn't stand out that clearly then, because I was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I was, I don't know, 17, 18. So it was just sort of the world that I knew. But in hindsight, I've thought back about that a lot.
Well, and it's funny, like I was thinking about some of those European guys from yesterday's stream spurging out, and I could not care less. I could not give less shit about what a European has to say.
Yeah, right. That's what, and yeah, like reading through the comments on it, I'm like, I can tell some of these people are European. Sometimes it's like the spelling will give it away, but sometimes some of them I can tell just by their the tone of their comment, and I can tell that, like, I understand what they are thinking. I'm thinking, and I'm just like, your perspective on the American spirit is kind of a cartoon. Ironically, it doesn't really. It just doesn't really square with the actual experience of America as an American. And I think this is probably part of the developing phenomenon that we're experiencing as we move further and further into this multipolarity. We're starting to see forces within America are beginning to like retrench back to America and reasserting American sovereignty in a spiritual sense. You're starting to see a revival of that American spirit. And this is something that not all Americans are actually going to be like tapped into this. Not all Americans still have this, to the extent that many Americans have been Europeanized. John MC here in the chat said, I threw it up on the screen a minute ago. He said 100 years ago, USA was about 50 years behind Europe in decay, decline, and dissolution. Now, America is about 5 years behind certain parts of Europe. Yeah, and I think that's the case. It seems it's becoming really clear to me that that America has been being Europeanized away from the American identity of the past, And part of the Trump phenomenon is a reassertion of that American identity.
I know a guy who's he's a missionary over in Eastern Europe, Protestant missionary, but I was talking to him, and he related to me that basically everybody over there sees Americans, what they think of when they think of Americans is a bunch of gun-toting rednecks,
Mm-hmm.
and I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Like, I really, like, I want to be that. I want everybody to be that.
Mm-hmm. Wintry ceases that ignores the elite theory effects, though it sounds pretty populist, which is doomed to failure. That's the thing. It's not just populist, because this desire for a revival of the American identity is something that's happening within the elite circles. I think this is one of the things that has been, I've been trying to pick out what is it that differentiates this potential counter elite that we've talked about. What is it that differentiates them from the regime? And I think this may be the heart of it, that they see the American identity as something aspirational. They see it as something that's noble. They actually, I think on a kind of a shallow, naive level, they actually really believe the things about the greatness of American democracy and freedom and liberty and free speech and free market and yada, yada, yada. They believe those things in spirit.
What was that chick's name who wrote that speech?
Catherine Boyle.
Yeah, the American dynamism thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reeks of what you're saying.
Right. And I think, and this is something that this observation, I think, is going to be lost on some people because they've become numb to that sort of vitalistic spirit. They don't actually,
Wouldn't it be cool?
They don't see or feel the power of it.
Like, wouldn't it be cool? How do I say this? Like, I remember growing up, you know, coming off of like 9/11 and all of the propaganda. America is so tough and blow shit up, and we're cool and badass and stuff. And like, there's a piece of me that I want that. I want to be cool and blow shit up and badass. You know?
Uh-huh.
It'd be cool if I lived in a country where I'd be proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
That, hey, we got fireworks and we fucking shoot shit and smoke cigarettes and yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's something that is, it's something that really, to the people that it speaks to, it really speaks to them.
I remember, because for a long time, just being a Zoomer, it kind of comes with the territory, but just being totally disillusioned with America as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, in one sense saying, yeah, okay, I'm American, but having not identifying with America, not having any love for America, kind of actually resenting it and hating my country, and it kind of sucks. And look at all the horrible things we do all over the world, and I think we're the bad guys. And I remember listening to, I think it was James Poulos on a podcast a number of months back, and him talking about how he's proud to be an American and how he loves America. And that kind of like cracked something in me where I'm like, I don't know if I'm there yet. Certainly, I don't think I am, but I would love to be at the point where I lived in a country that I actually was proud of and liked and identified with. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Mm-hmm. Like the Lee Greenwood "I'm Proud to Be an American" song. It's become so. I remember that song coming out, and I remember people loving it. Like people being like, "Hell yeah, that's right! I'm proud to be an American." Or at least I know I'm free. And what's the words?
And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. Proudly stand up. Yeah, banger.
Yeah, right. Like that is, we've been conditioned to see that as really cringe because of how departed from like the actual facts on the ground it is. But here's the thing. The actual facts on the ground are less significant than the spiritual posture of the people. The spiritual posture of the people can define what the facts on the ground are. Ultimately, the facts on the ground are a matter of interpretation, really. It's like how you decide you want to interpret them and act accordingly. So you could choose, you in a sense, you could choose your own facts. As you're putting together the spirit that unites a body of people.
And just as a matter of like just being pragmatic, it serves, like, for the sake of praxis, I think it serves you well to take an optimistic look at the future. And to think, hey, the country I'm in now can be the country I want it to be in 50 years. I think that's going to, like, completely change your disposition on how you engage with the world and how you plan for the future. And it's a lot more fun, honestly. I'm getting real tired of the doomers, man.
Because here's the thing.
Tired of the doomers and I don't know, the neopagans. I'm tired of them. The vitalist Nietzschean guys. I'm tired of them. All the freaking race realists. I'm tired of them. And oh, the Jews this, Jews that. I'm tired of you guys. You're annoying me. Ugh, you guys are annoying. You guys are a bummer to hang out with. You're a bummer.
Someone's gonna say
you're wrong. You're just a bummer. You just suck at parties, man. This party sucks.
Someone's going to say that you're a bummer because you're complaining about doomers too much, in which case we're going to say, no, you're just a contrarian.
Yeah, hipster.
Our complaints are valid. Yours aren't.
I'm right. You're all wrong. All of you.
Yeah, right. You said that there's value in like believing that the world could become a world that you would want to live in 50 years. Like visualizing that reality and then moving toward it. Because here's the thing. If you assume that the world is going to be worse in the future, and you embody that assumption, you're guaranteeing that that is the case. If you believe the world is going to be better in the future and you embody that assumption, there's a possibility that you'll be wrong. There's a possibility that it'll be worse. But there's also a possibility that it'll be better. Particularly because you don't need, this is the latent liberal. You don't need something to be better for everyone. You need something to be better for you and your people, for your family, for your friends. So if you set your mind to creating that, you can create that. You could create a world where in 50 years, your children have a better life than they're going to have if you continue on your current track. But if you decide that your children are going to have a worse experience of life in 50 years than you do now, and you begin fulfilling that reality in the way that you behave, then you are dooming your children to that. This is the absent father phenomenon that breeds the vengeful son.
It's funny.
Go
ahead. Jinx. It's kind of a meme, and we talk about it and joke about it, blood memory. But I think there's something to that. Like when we're talking about the American spirit, that's really the only way I can describe it. Is just like just being an American, being born and raised here. It's just in you. There's the water you swim in, to some degree. Sure, there's a lot of piss in the water now, but like, you're alive.
Wintery ceases. If you're doom pilled, why plant the tree that your grandchild will sit under and harvest in 50 years? Exactly. This is you want to talk about great men? You want to talk about elites? This is elite behavior. This is what the elites do. The elites are those who are building the future. They're not complaining about the way it is right now and bemoaning the fact that, they didn't leave us a good world. Our world sucks now. Guess we're just gonna pass off a shitty world to our descendants so they can sit and complain about the shitty world that we passed on to them, so that they can pass a shitty world on to their descendants.
Do you know what your do you know what kind of stock you hail from? Do you know much about your family tree or history?
Uh-huh.
Anything good?
Very Scandinavian.
Okay.
Norwegian and Swedish primarily, with some Finnish, and then I think that's like 40 something percent, and then mid 30s is British and Irish, and then like 5% German and French, and 0.3% Ashkenazi.
Uh-oh. You just outed yourself.
Uh-huh.
I've
One
got like
drop rule, right?
yeah, I've got like 1% Ashkenazi. At least, according to like the Jews who run 23andMe or whatever.
I kind of think that I very much buy the conspiracy that they just inject a little bit into everybody just to give the, like, okay, you get 0.1%, you get 0.6%, you get 0.3%. That way
They're like, oh, hey, this guy seems a little racist. Wouldn't it be funny if we put like African in there? Yeah. I've got well, I am a blood relative of a descendant of one of the, well, okay, not the Queen of England, but the Queen of England's sister. I don't remember which queen because I don't care about Europeans. But then I've got like two halves of my family. One half of my family, one of them was actually a signature on the Mayflower. Puritan. Puritan is Puritan. Actually came over with the Puritans. Let's see. I am a blood relative of John Adams and John Quincy Adams.
Wow.
I've also got some Southern aristocracy in me. A couple of slave owners on my dad's side. So I've got some Northerners, some Southerners. I've got some royalty in my blood. I could be the King of England, guys.
You could, yeah. Just have to have a whole bunch of people die ahead of you, and then
we just gotta have like half the world's population die first, and then I'll be king.
So if the European Spurgs come after you, then you can tell them, hey, I could be your king. You better respect me.
Uh-huh.
Respect your authority. Bill Hicks. I'm so happy we have Bill Hicks here in the chat. He says, patriotism can stir up a feeling real deep in the psyche, make you want to believe in something vital, make you feel proud to sacrifice for your people.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think this is a distinctly Christian sentiment as well, because patriotism is this feeling of strong association with your kin, which is nations were just an outworking of families. The family becomes like a clan, and then a clan becomes a tribe, and then a tribe becomes a village, and then a village, you eventually get up to the level of nation. But it ultimately stems back to the family, which is why fatherhood and monarchy are so closely linked. God being our father, Jesus being the king, like all these things, they all go together. You can't separate politics and religion from one another. They're not the same domain. They're different domains, but they're expressing the same phenomena in the different domains. So this gets back to, I think, I haven't encountered very many Christian doom pillars.
Yeah, right. Politics is a rather low resolution way to view the world.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's your only lens, why wouldn't you be black-pilled?
Right. I can understand that. Like, if you have like a fundamentally materialist or nominalist view of the world, well, yeah, like I would be really depressed too. I mean, frankly, if I lived in Europe, I would probably be really depressed. I would probably be really feel very doomerist about the future.
I'm also a filthy Irishman. Sorry, guys.
I wanted to highlight, first of all, we had a super chat back here that I forgot to mention. $5 from TK. Thank you, man. He said, the seed oil haters are also hopeful despite being cringe pagans, the BAP squad. Maybe an endocrine problem.
Yeah, probably. They're not peating hard enough.
Mm-hmm. Then your mortal enemy said something that I think was appropriate to highlight here. Let me
Nah,
find
don't
it.
bother.
Josiah said any semblance of right organization in Europe was conquered in World War II. America hasn't yet been so conquered. I think that's a very good observation. The one of the things that led us on thinking about this was this interview that I was listening to yesterday between Tom Luongo and Richard Poe. And I mentioned on the stream last night that I was about half an hour into it. And I finished it last night. It was very good, very, very interesting, very compelling. A lot of it is like this is my new rabbit hole. This is the thing that I'm going to go dig into for a while and see if the perspective on the past 300 years or so of global history really is the perspective that they're presenting, if true, would completely transform the way that I understand current events. And it would really reinforce a lot of the things that we've been talking about and thinking about lately. So I'm very motivated in determining this. But the gist of it, the title of the podcast, this is on Tom Luongo's show. I can never remember exactly. It's Goats, Guns, and Gold. I can't remember which order they're in. But if you just look up Tom Luongo, it's episode 171. And it's how all roads lead back to London. And the case that he's making, so he's talking to Richard Poe. And Richard Poe wrote a really long Substack piece last year called How the British Invented Communism and Blamed It on the Jews, which is a hell of a title. I just started reading through it, but he talks about a lot of the stuff in this podcast episode, which I very strongly recommend you guys go listen to. That he touches on in that piece. And essentially the premise of it, let's see if I can kind of distill this down to something fairly straightforward. The premise of it is that America as a British colony, so you had America as a British colony, and as it was beginning to build and develop in power, the British had a strong incentive to ensure that America wasn't able to develop manufacturing independence and like industrial independence from Europe. So they intervened. So you had obviously the Revolutionary War, which was fought with them directly, and France alongside them. And then in one of the things I'd never known about, and this is something that I'm going to have to go read up on, but I would be surprised if he would say something like this that's just plainly wrong. So I'm kind of going to take his word for it. But the so-called war between the states here, as he's presenting it, was
the War of Northern Aggression.
Yes, the War of Northern Aggression. It was in a large sense, it was actually a proxy war between Britain and Russia, because that fight has gone on for a very long time. Britain has seen Russia and the development of a Russian empire as a direct threat to their interests. So there's been lots of squabbles over time related to that.
Isn't like their royal families intermarried?
That sounds familiar. I wouldn't.
Wasn't
be
it the Tsar Nicholas? Wasn't it his brother? I think, who was married to Saint Elizabeth.
I don't know.
Was part of the British royal family.
Maybe.
Converted to Orthodoxy and then was martyred by the communists.
Okay.
It's my wife's patron saint, by the way.
Okay. So I think
I got that right.
I think some of these squabbles go back even like quite a bit further than that, even back into the 1700s, 1800s. And so Britain had an interest in seeing the South win the War of Northern Aggression. Or actually, that's not quite accurate. I'm repeating the premises that he's laying out. It wasn't that they had an interest in the South winning; it's that they had an interest in the war resolving in such a way that split the United States up. So they were prepared to offer essentially a peace deal. The British were operating on behalf of the South because the South was mainly an export economy. So the South had the relationship to Britain that was exactly what Britain wanted. But the North was industrializing, which Britain viewed as more of a threat. So the South presented, or sorry, the British were, their plan essentially was to have the War of Northern Aggression end in a peace deal where they agreed to be two separate entities, because that would maintain, the someone up here in the chat said just a minute ago, the whole point of a colony is to be a subordinate organism that's viewed as part of the whole. So to maintain America as a subordinate organism, the Brits had an interest in that division happening. However, the Russians had an interest in Britain's interests being undermined. So the Russians actually sent ships over and stationed them in San Francisco and New York, essentially as a threat to the British that if you intervene against the northern states on behalf of the South, then you're going to have a war with Russia, which means land war with Russia in Europe. These are the ideas he's laying out. So, which is a very interesting perspective on that period that I'd never heard before. If that's true, that's very interesting. Because what ended up happening then is, obviously, the North won. And if you look at economically what happened after that, you get the Gilded Age. You get, and essentially what happened is that when the North won, the North essentially then just colonized the South. So the South existed in a colonial relationship with the North, where so now you've got like two layers of colonial power projection here. And from then on, like, this is where America begins to explode. So one of the points that Tom Luongo makes is that from Britain's perspective, it's like, one of the things that the British people say is they're like, oh, we're just a tiny little island. How could we be so scheming and powerful? And he said that this is like precisely the point for Britain as an empire, for them to be like, what are they going to export? They don't have lots of land or manufacturing capacity or natural resources, or what they export is diplomacy and statecraft and spycraft. So
they can export shitty breakfast.
Yeah. Too many beans. Okay,
every day's the 4th of July for them.
So the comments are flying here, so I need to catch up and see if anyone is directly countering anything that I'm saying here. Because what I'm doing here is I'm telling you what I'm going to be going and digging into. Yeah, if you disagree, then we're going to be that's going to be the last thing you posted on here. Tsar Nicholas and King Edward looked a lot alike too. The American Revolution was basically Britain's Vietnam. A book titled The Real History of the American Revolution goes into detail on this, currently on my reading list. I think he may have even made that point directly, that the American Revolution was Britain's Vietnam.
I've heard Yarvin make the same point.
So there's something there. Because then if you follow this train along, then the case that he's making is that British intelligence essentially retrenched themselves after that point, and it's kind of like their colonial satrapy, their asset was growing beyond their control. So they had a choice, essentially, either just kind of throw up your hands and well, whatever, or you pivot strategically and decide, this colonial power, we're going to give them independence, and then use them as a bludgeon to essentially extend and protect our own imperial interests, to be able to maintain the empire, where now the America becomes like the enforcement arm of the British Empire. And he provided a lot of different proofs for this. Each of those, I'm going to go back through and listen to it multiple times and run through and check all of these out. But so then this gets you to the Fed 1913. Then you have World War I and World War II, and it's been fairly well documented what the actual purposes of those wars were and the role of British intelligence in them. And then British intelligence was extremely influential in the establishment of the OSS,
Yep.
which then leads you into the American national security state, which was co-opted by neocons who were quote unquote reformed Trotskyites, and Trotsky was a well-documented British asset. So there's a whole bunch of different little threads that are coming together here. Fast forward now to the 2016 to 2020 period, and you have Brexit, which now I need to ponder on this. Is Brexit is Brexit actually a British intelligence move one way or the other? Is it an anti-British intelligence move or a pro-British intelligence move if you want to take like the galaxy brain perspective on it? But then specifically this thing that Tom Luongo and Danielle DiMartino Booth and Phil Gibson have been talking about with the move away from LIBOR to SOFR.
Yeah, Josiah says nothing more fun than telling libertarians that the Fed fixes this. Actually,
yeah, right. Yeah, that's the rub of it. Is that if this narrative arc of history is true or is even mostly true, then as Tom Luongo, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Phil Gibson, as these people are portraying this as the actual American Revolution. This is the actual move toward American independence. So from this frame of view, we're not at the end of American empire, we're at the beginning of it. Which is that's a mind fuck. And I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is the actual truth. Again, all of history is just a bunch of stories that we tell each other, and you kind of can decide for yourself what's true and what isn't. But the fact pattern seems to be there. At least enough of the fact pattern seems to be there that you can draw a conclusion that's along these lines.
So what if we come full circle on recently? We've come full circle on democracy, on the Fed, on the Jews, on what else?
Easy on that one, but yeah. What else have we come full circle on? Lee Greenwood. I don't know. There's been other things. I wonder what we're going to come full circle on next. Like
yeah, man.
Boomers, maybe.
That's a tall order, bud.
Hey, you were the one on the phone earlier saying that you actually almost feel a little bit of sympathy for him.
Well, I feel sympathy for them because they're going to try to they think they're sitting pretty with the retirement and stuff like that. But since nobody younger than them is actually buying stocks and stuff, they're going to retire, and then the value of their assets is just going to disappear, and they're going to be left destitute. And then it'll be up to us to undo generations of wrongdoing on their part. They just abandoned all their parents to nursing homes, and we're going to have to okay, I guess you can move back in if we're going to be the better man.
I guess
I'll have to live with my parents again.
I'll throw the boomers a bone. I'll say that if we had been boomers, then we would be boomers. So the fact that the boomers are boomers is because they're boomers, because they were born and came of age at the time that boomers were born and came of age. So they were the world didn't start with boomers. They received a world and they were crafted and molded themselves as they were growing up. It's the only world they've ever lived in. So you can kind of get into an infinite regress here where you're like, well, it's actually the boomers were fucked up because their parents didn't raise them right. And it's their parents' fault. But then you could do this forever.
Yeah. So that's why blaming people and resentment doesn't really get you anywhere.
Right. Yeah, resentment is liberalism corporatized. Or liberalism is resentment corporatized, rather. You can't have liberalism without a villain. It's like the definition, it's like instantiating the villain in society and then and then revolving your polity around that villain.
Yeah, it's the state, or it's the bourgeois, or it's, this or
The
that.
Jews.
The
Or
Jews, or
mm-hmm.
it's always a boogeyman. As Ryan Isaac says, we have the blessing of resolving the problem, even if it isn't our choice.
Mm-hmm.
What a mature comment. I
See,
applaud you.
that's why we keep Ryan around, man.
That's why. That's why.
Wintery C said, "Is it possible that the Fed is the only American institution that isn't fully captured by woke?" I think it is possible. I do think that I don't think that it's a coincidence or that it's an insignificant that the current Fed chairman is 8th generation Virginian aristocracy, a Gentile, a Jesuit. Like, these are all stark departures from the 1, 2, 3 predecessors. I think that's not a coincidence. And the fact that the Fed is making moves that could be perceived as American sovereigntist moves, and they're doing that under the first Fed chairman who's a Gentile in a while, at least. I don't know. These are I don't think it's, I don't know enough to say, oh yeah, this is absolutely the case. This is 100% what's happening. I'm kind of retarded with a lot of this stuff. I'm just listening to people who are smarter than me, but they're making the case very compellingly.
It's granting, for the sake of argument, that it is, let's say it is the case that we're at the dawn of the true American empire. Do you think it'll be based or cringe? What do you think? I hope it's cool. I hope we go to Mars and like shoot bugs and shit.
Yeah.
If
I don't
Mars
know.
is real, space,
You're right. I think. See, here's where the black pill lies with me. I think it's probably going to be cringe. I don't know. I think, I don't think that this is set in stone. I think that it's this is part of the opportunity that's ahead of us, if this is true. And even if this whole read of everything is just completely 100% false, not true at all. It's actually, the tribe, the tiny hats, who have just this is their millennia's old plot coming to fruition. There's no reason why you can't just act as if it's true. I'm not saying divorce yourself from reality. I'm saying set your sights on creating a future and get to work creating it. Even if you want to take the most doomer-pilled, like, Talmudic 2,000-year plot view of the world, that 2,000 years covers an awful lot of great stuff. It covers a lot of, I'm sure you have photo albums. Your mom or your grandma has photo albums. And you can go flip through those photo albums and see, like, birthday parties or times when you went to the park and you played on the swing set. Or, I don't know, you were working in a garden. There are these little micro things that are great. They're fantastic. There's been great men, beautiful things. You could go sit on a mountain and watch the sunset. Like, terminally online brain really poisons people's ability to appreciate how good life is, even when it's bad.
Yeah, I often say that. Like, okay, yep, you're right. Everything sucks. It's raining acid. There's fluoride in the tap water. Tiny hats control everything. Everyone's a degenerate. Everyone's gay, etc., etc. But if you just kind of like close the laptop, put down the phone, go stand on your front porch, and you hear the birds and you see kids playing, and it's mostly fine.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing stopping you from going full Uncle Ted and just literally just going out into the mountains. I know, probably wouldn't be a bad life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you believe everything's going to hell, there was a guy who commented on the stream, said, what did he say? He said, no, nothing's going to get better ever again. There's not going to be any new relationships formed. history peaked in the early 1900s and it's all downhill from here. I'm like, all right, well, like, why are you commenting on YouTube? What do you?
Why are you alive?
Right. What if everything's downhill from here? Then what are you living for? Clearly, if you wake up each day, you think that it's worth waking up that day. So maybe actually make something of that day. And then make something of the next day. Start stacking days. Do something good today and then do something good on top of that good thing tomorrow. Start stacking these things together. Because again, get this latent liberal shit out of your head. You don't need to make everything the standard for victory here isn't we eradicated evil from the world and made everything better for everyone always forever eternally. That's coming. We know that's coming. But there's a lot of distance between here and there for you to make things better. Make things better for your family. If you don't have a family, go find one. Make something better for them. Take care of your own parents.
I'm giving you all homework. You can go read a speech given by Theodore Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
The cool Uncle Ted. Called The Strenuous Life. I recommend it. It'll make you excited. It'll make you feel like, hell yeah, go blow stuff up. So read that. And then go read Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This will be good for you.
Get some culture.
That's right. Read some poetry.
$2 super chat from TK says, but if I can't blame others, I have to do stuff. And therein lies the rub. This is this exact same phenomenon with libertarians. This is just the libertarian mind that has changed, has moved around some of the political axioms, but it's still operating from the exact same perspective. Bill Hicks says, this has quickly become my favorite political podcast. I'll have to listen to this later. It's a lovely day and I can't be terminally online. Shout out to you, Bill Hicks. I do notice that there's a very interesting spelling of favorite there. Hopefully you're Canadian. If you're Canadian, we can tolerate you. But this is an anti-European podcast now.
That's right. North American supremacy.
That's right. And then I think this is a good point here from Josiah. Josiah's on a roll today. He said, the world will be a slightly sadder place without boomer men's storytelling.
That's true. Sitting at a bar next to a boomer is a good time.
Uh-huh. There's something charming about see here, we are coming full circle on the boomers.
Coming full circle on the boomers.
There's something charming about the naivete of the boomer worldview. Like just as a you have to sort of detach yourself from recognizing that this person reflecting their worldview to you, their generational worldview, the implications of that is that there's people who actually have their thumb on the balance of power, who see the world the same way, and that can be blackpilling, I'll admit. But if you can separate yourself from that and you just sit down and just chat with them, it's actually pretty charming. It's kind of like, oh, it's nice having you around. I wish the world looked and worked the way you think it does. It would be nice. All right. Well, that was a quick hour and a half.
Yeah,
I didn't even think we were going to get an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was. It flew by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
King Salmonfish says, was I interpreted as doomer when I presented the issues on the table? If so, I'm the move a mountain with buckets, non-utopian realist romantic. I did something about the economy myself. No one else did. No, I haven't interpreted you as a doomer at all, King Salmonfish, Your Excellency.
Should have I?
I'll be honest, I don't understand most of what you say, but I appreciate you. I like having you around. I like the things you say, even if I don't necessarily understand them.
Everybody say hello to my little pixie.
Hi, little pixie.
Oh. There she goes.
She did not want people to say hello to her.
Nope.
Random username says, get a boomer in a cigar lounge. Most have Vietnam stories that are beyond fucked, and you realize a lot are oblivious to the world as a defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my dad was in Vietnam.
My wife's dad was as well. My dad was much too young. My dad was born in 68. $2 from Bison American Club. Thank you, friend. Says, boomers worm food.
I'm not sure what that means.
No. Is this... Are you giving us some boomers worm food? Are you saying the boomers should be worm food? Are you saying the boomers are worm food? The boomers will become worm food? Please elaborate.
Or are you just saying boomers worm food?
Yeah.
You're just saying words.
Like a random word generator that just puts some words together.
They are all soon to be. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So enjoy them while they last, guys. You'll look back fondly on the days when the boomers are gone. You'll be like, man, I wish I had that guy in the bar with me right now to tell me all those crazy stories.
Colin Rosh says they were heavily influenced by CIA propaganda and don't have access to alternative information like we do. It's not really their fault. Yeah. See, you guys, we can do it. We can come full circle on the boomers. The New York Redneck says, your love stream projects weakness. Are we having a love stream? Maybe we are. We're having a boomer love stream. Everyone's talking about how much with like
if you go back to the beginning and you'll have the hate stream.
You're right. He says, be stronger. We project weakness, Cooper. We need to be stronger.
All right, here we go. Look at these. Look at these pecs. Look at these biceps.
Yeah. Twink power.
That's right. I can pec deck over my body weight.
Ryan says New York Redneck. Is that Wyman? I remember when Wyman used to comment in the chat. That was the old days. He's too good for us now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate you guys. Thank you for showing up. You guys have done great with the likes today. 37 viewers, 33 likes. I'm impressed.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Good for you guys. You're learning. We didn't even have to coach you on it this time, you fucking retards. We'll talk to you later, guys. Have a good one. Like the stream, share the stream, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. I'll be on Oren McIntyre tomorrow. I want to say 2 p.m. Central Time, 3 p.m. Eastern. Just follow me on Twitter. I'll tweet about it. And yeah, catch you on the flip side, guys.